If you stood on one of the streets in downtown Pyongyang and looked down, you would see nothing but concrete and asphalt. But 300 meters beneath your feet, or perhaps deeper, because no one outside really knows, runs one of the most extraordinary subway systems in the world. Extraordinary not because it is the biggest or the fastest, because it is neither. Extraordinary because it is as deep as no other. Because its stations look like palaces. Because its names are an ideological manifesto. Because for several decades, the Western world did not even know how many stations it had. And because its true function may have nothing to do with public transport. The Pyongyang Metro is one of the most fascinating and least understood pieces of infrastructure on our planet, and this film is about it. The history of this system begins not in 1973, when the first line opened, but much earlier, in ruins. Pyongyang in 1953 was a city literally razed to the ground. During the 3-year Korean War, American air power carried out more than 1,000 bombing raids over it, dropping a total of over 100,000 tons of bombs, more than on any other city during the entire Second World War, according to some estimates. Kim Il-sung returned to the ruins and decided to build a new capital from scratch, a capital meant to be a monument to socialism visible to the entire world. Planning urban transport, including the underground railway, fit into this broader project of building state power. The decision to build the metro was made in the mid-60s, before neighboring South Korea had even managed to plan its own system. This was an ideological race as serious as the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. Construction officially began in 1968, though some sources push that moment back to 1965. Engineers of the North Korean People's Army, supported by Soviet and Chinese technical advisors, had to contend with an exceptionally difficult geological foundation. Pyongyang lies on a hard granite massif, which on one hand made tunnel drilling much more difficult, and on the other gave the deeply buried stations excellent natural protection. The most tragic moment of the entire construction came during the digging of the tunnel under the Taedong River, which cuts through Pyongyang roughly in half. There was a catastrophic accident there, the collapse of the tunnel under water pressure, in which, according to various accounts, 100 workers died. The bodies were never fully recovered, and the tunnel was abandoned. That is precisely why today's entire metro system runs only along the west bank of the river. The metro never crossed the Taedong at the eastern underground level. This is a fact that explains why a large part of Pyongyang, lying on the eastern side of the river, never received access to the subway. On September 6, 1973, on the anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japanese occupation, which fell a few days earlier, Kim Il-sung personally opened the first metro line. This line is called Cholima, a reference to the winged horse from Korean mythology, a symbol of unstoppable progress and speed. For the regime, it was a propaganda triumph of enormous value. North Korea was the first on the entire Korean peninsula to build a metro. Seoul, which opened its system only a year later in 1974, had to acknowledge Pyongyang's precedence. In this one matter, the historical facts are on the north side. Today, the system comprises 2 lines, with a total length of 22.5 kilometers and 16 stations. The Cholima line runs from Pulginbiol Station in the south to Rakwon Station in the northeast. The Hyeoksin line runs from Kwangbok Station in the southwest and crosses the first line at Chonu Station, the only transfer hub in the entire system. The final section of the Cholima line, connecting Ponghwa and Puhung stations, was not put into service until 1987, more than 14 years after the inauguration of the whole system. Expansion moved slowly because the regime's priorities lay elsewhere. It is estimated that between 300,000 and 700,000 passengers use the metro daily, a discrepancy that in itself says a great deal about the quality of information the outside world has about this system. The metro operates from 5 in the morning until 2300 hours and, oddly enough, is officially closed on every first Monday of the month for reasons described as economic. The greatest and most recognizable technical record of Pyongyang's metro is its depth. Stations are located at a depth of between 100 and 120 meters below the surface, and some estimates speak of even 200 meters at the deepest points of the system. By comparison, The deepest station in the London Underground, Hampstead, lies at a depth of 60 meters, and the deepest station in the Moscow Metro, Admiralteyskaya, reaches 102 meters. Pyongyang beats these records and makes its system one of the deepest in the world. The ride down to the platform on Pyongyang's escalators takes an average of 3.5 to 4 minutes, as long as walking through 2 floors of a decent high-rise. The escalators are exceptionally steep, and their speed is noticeably higher than in an average European metro. The same temperature, a constant 18 degrees Celsius all year round, prevails on every platform regardless of the season. Its depth protects it from surface climate fluctuations just as effectively as it would from the effects of a nuclear explosion. And this brings us to the key question of the metro's function, a function that may be just as important as transportation, though officially it is never mentioned first. The stations of the Pyongyang Metro were designed and built with the intention of serving as anti-nuclear shelters. Steel blast doors that can be locked at every station, corridors with walls several meters thick, pneumatic seals. All of this is built into every station of the system. North Korea is a country that has lived in a state of technical war with South Korea and the United States since the armistice ended in 1953. In this context, building shelters under the city is not paranoia. It is a rational strategic calculation. If Pyongyang were bombarded, the metro could take in hundreds of thousands of people and protect them from the shockwave, radiation, and fallout for long enough to survive the first phase of the attack. The architecture of the stations is what strikes anyone who has had the chance to descend beneath Pyongyang's earth. Australian traveler and blogger Elliot Davies, who visited the metro as one of the few Western tourists with access to all stations after 2014, said outright that it was probably the most beautiful metro he had ever seen. Stations are decorated in the style of Stalinist socialist realism, similar to the deep stations of the Moscow metro from the 30s and 40s, which were meant to serve as underground monuments to communist glory. Marble floors, colonnaded halls, ceilings adorned with crystal chandeliers weighing as much as 4 tons each, mosaics in vivid colors covering entire platform walls. This is an image hard to reconcile with the notion of a poor country. At Zhonggwang Station, the walls are covered with inlaid frescoes totaling up to 80 meters in length, depicting scenes from everyday life, nation building, and the defense of the fatherland. Puhung Station boasts gigantic chandeliers and a huge mural titled as depicting the great leader among workers and officials. Gwangbok Station has deliberately dim lighting so that at the right points it can dramatically illuminate the centrally placed statue of Kim Il-sung. One tourist admitted that the sight was quite frightening. Each station bears a name that is an ideological slogan or symbol. Chonu means comrade, Pulginbyol is red star, Tongil means reunification, Quezon is triumph, Rakwon, paradise. It is not about geographical orientation. The stations are not named after streets or districts. The whole naming system is a lesson in ideology, one that a passenger encounters twice a day, on the way to work and back. The same goes for the contents of the stations. On the platforms there are stands with framed copies of the state newspaper, Rodong Sinmun, which passengers can read while waiting for the train. In each car, above the windows and inside the compartments, hang hand-painted portraits of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, each one approved by the highest authorities. Patriotic melodies play from the loudspeakers. There are no ads. There are no commercial announcements. There is only ideological messaging, continuous, tireless, and present at every step. The metro's rolling stock has its own intriguing history. Initially, the system was served by Chinese DK4 type cars, produced specifically for Pyongyang at the Changchun factory in 1972 and 1973. For years, the North Korean authorities publicly claimed they were domestic products, a lie that served the country's propaganda of economic self-sufficiency. These cars were withdrawn from service in 1998 and sent back to China, where some of them ended up on Beijing Metro Line 13. Since 1997, Pyongyang has been running cars imported from Berlin's U-Bahn, Type GI from the former East Berlin Metro, produced in the years 1978 to 1982, and Type D named Dora from 82, and Type D named Dora from the former West Berlin Metro, produced in the years 1957 to 1965. The cars were repainted in red and cream and fitted inside with portraits of the leaders, but the attentive observer can still see traces of the original German markings on their exteriors. This detail is almost symbolic. Since 2016, a new type of train, manufactured in North Korea, has been under test. There are only 2 examples in the entire fleet. The first was built in 2015 exclusively for Kim Jong-un. The second was put into service in 2020. The vehicles are equipped with an electronic passenger information system showing the current speed, temperature, and humidity, a modern feature that contrasts with the rest of the fleet. Each train set running on the network consists of only 3 cars, which during rush hour leads to severe overcrowding. The maximum interval between trains is 2 minutes at peak time. Outside that, trains run every 5 to 7 minutes. For decades, one of the biggest mysteries associated with the Pyongyang metro was the number of its stations itself. Foreign tourists had access only to 2 stations, Puhung and Jonggwang, and it was these 2 underground stops that were a mandatory part of every organized tour to the capital. Conspiracy theories arose suggesting that the whole system was a deception, that the metro consisted only of these 2 stations, and that the route between them was a short theatrical segment operated by specially trained extras, pretending to be ordinary residents. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click on the next episode.